Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our session on how to advocate for technology investments in order to take your organization to the next level. We're at the top of the hour, so let's get started. My name is Catherine Bergerson. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Newsbank, and I'll be joined today by my colleague, Mariana Boone. As we kick things off today, I want to let you know that this session is being recorded, and we will send a copy to you via email. On our agenda today, I'll quickly share a bit of background about Newsbank and Insightful. We'll jump into the program with those top strategies to advocate for technology, and we'll be happy to take your questions. And then we'll share some tips on how to make the most of your tech advocacy. A bit of a clarification on how to ask a question or download the documents, depending on the type of version of GoToWebinar you have. You may see 4 to 5 icons on the left hand of your screen. You just click there and type in your question or download the document. Or you may see several gray bars that say questions or chat or download. And if you click there, you'll be able to type in your questions. We'll do our best to get to all of them. If we run short on time, we do commit to getting back to you in the near future. To share a bit of background about Insightful, it is powered by our parent company, which is Newsbank. And Newsbank is a leading news and information provider, aggregating sources from around the world, bringing teams access to credible, vetted, global news sources, many of which are unique to our company, and all are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from any device. We're proud to share we recently celebrated our 50th anniversary as a company. Insightful is part of Newsbank's philanthropy division, and it's a news software that draws on the news sources to help nonprofits fill in information gaps, know more about donors and prospects in order to promote better philanthropic engagement. And it's truly this simple. When you know more, you can deepen donor relationships and raise more money to do more good in the world. The reason we're all here today is to learn more about how to advocate for tech investments to take your organization to the next level. To lead our discussion is Mariana Boone. Mariana has nearly 2 decades of experience as a development officer. She has worked in community foundations, higher education, and healthcare institutions where she has successfully advocated for and implemented technology solutions to help advance the mission of her organizations. Mariana currently serves as the Senior Project Manager for Insightful. Please join me in welcoming Mariana.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Catherine. I am going to just take a moment to share my screen. All right, hopefully you still see my face on the screen. How's that? Am I changing the slides?
You sure are. Thank you.
Awesome. All right,
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here, to be speaking on one of my favorite topics, near and dear to my heart. Technology in service of our organization's missions. So whether you are considering a shift in your fundraising strategy toward maybe building up a base of sustainer donors, or looking for non-event-based ways to steward and cultivate major donors, or finding ways to scale retention efforts for those donors you may have acquired in the pandemic or in another event, you may be considering technology as a solution to help take you to the next level. But how do you choose the right solution, and how do you make the case for it to those who hold the purse strings? As Catherine said, I've not only had the good fortune of being a product manager and helping to bring technology solutions to clients, but I've also spent nearly 2 decades in roles that involved managing, evaluating, and implementing new technologies, including making the case to organizational leadership and boards of directors. And in that time, I have seen too many instances of organizations sort of heading toward that shiny new object of technology without understanding whether they actually needed it or not. And so today, I'd like to share some tips I've learned over those past 2 decades of doing this firsthand, or seeing others who have succeeded and those who failed at various stages of this process. So first things first, identify the problem. Make sure that you identify and describe the problem you are trying to solve. It is important to be clear and specific about this. This is your foundational work. This is what everything else is going to build on. This could be anything from a process that is inefficient. In one organization I worked with, we had a physical routing sheet that was attached to every gift agreement to make sure it was reviewed by all of the relevant stakeholders. And since our offices were dispersed, it took days and sometimes weeks because it had to travel from office to office via courier mail. Implementing an electronic routing process shortened the review time to only a couple of days. Of course, there were intricacies in that process that had to be figured out, but identify where the problem is. For us, it was a process inefficiency. Your problem may be a lack of certain data elements that would help you build better qualification and cultivation strategies. Whatever the case may be, make sure to describe your problem in specific terms. One example may be, each year, 300 new Giving Tuesday donors don't renew. According to research, personalized stewardship increases donor retention, and a 10% improvement in retention can yield up to 200% increase in value from these donors. And if this was your problem, you might actually be able to get a very specific dollar amount here too, which always helps. Once you have identified the problem or opportunity, conduct a needs assessment to determine the specific requirements that your organization has. And what I mean by that is, if you're addressing a process problem, review your workflow. Actually sit with people, observe how they work and where the bottlenecks or other persistent problems appear. Perhaps even ask those key employees that you're sitting with, what would their ideal workflow look like? If it's data or resources related, review your existing tools and resources and see if you are using them to their fullest potential, or if they could be extended to fit your need. For example, does your CRM vendor include any helpful add-ons that would make it easier to obtain the missing data points you are looking for? And then assess your resources. What are the budget and human resources at your disposal? Be sure to consider resources needed to implement the technology, including training, change management, maintenance, support, your IT team. Many technology projects fail because of the lack of resources allocated to implementation and ongoing maintenance and support. And you'll hear me talk about this time and over again. Once you have defined your needs, define the most important business requirements for the solution. So if you've sat down with some team members to identify the roadblocks, the functionality must-haves would be those that unlock those bottlenecks that you have identified. Something like must allow for proactive research, not just reactive, maybe a functionality must-have. Implementation considerations. One of your requirements may be, ideally, this will not require IT involvement, or vendor provides support throughout implementation. Make sure you clearly understand this, though, as you are going through your evaluation process. I got burned on an experience where vendor provided support meant the vendor provided project planning and my team did all the work. So word to the wise there. Scalability should be a consideration. I know times may be tough now, but we all hope to continue to grow and hire new staff. So an important consideration may be, can I add more records? And can I add more user licenses without incurring additional costs down the line? Security is all the buzz. So it may be very specific for you. It may just be a question of, how will my donor data be protected in this process? And lastly, cost. Stay flexible here, I would say. Cost is a fungible point here. While you may appear to have budget limitations, if you go through this process and you can demonstrate the cost benefit returns as part of it, you may be able to make the case for additional investment. Once you have your business requirements under your belt, find out what technology solutions could address your needs. This may involve searching the web and looking for all of the off-the-shelf software already available. Depending on the problem you're looking to solve, this may involve building custom software for your needs, or there may be other technology solutions to consider. As a nonprofit, you may be eligible for discounts on hardware, software, and services. Organizations like TechSoup.org, N10.org for general nonprofits, your membership organizations, AFP, APRA, AASP are a great place to ask others how they have addressed a similar need. When I worked in higher education, we used to say that CASE, our Council for Advancement and Support of Education, stood for copy and steal everything. Of course, tongue in cheek, because we learned from one another so much through this information sharing. Ask others, share with others, and identify all the possible solutions. Now, when I say identify all the possible solutions, I mean, that is what I mean. I'm saying go ask them what their favorite one is, and just because you like somebody on a forum, go after that one solution. What you really need to do is do an honest and objective evaluation process. Solutions are plentiful, and it will be really important, typically in my experience, that you show exactly how you found the right fit. The best way to do this is to evaluate your solutions against your business needs and those business requirements that you have developed in the previous step. So consider your factors such as cost, implementation time, ease of use, scalability, as we discussed, and outline the process you've gone through and vendors you've evaluated. I show on the screen this simple matrix of business requirements versus solutions evaluated. It's a really good way to visualize your process. But I'd say make sure you also include other relevant information in some sort of accompanying narrative for your business case. You've done all this work, show that you've done it. Think about your audience. They're not going to have the knowledge that you have. But this kind of table quickly summarizes that sort of information and presents it in a really digestible format, particularly for those with short attention spans or not enough time to read through your entire narrative. Most of the time, I'll say in these evaluations, technology will come out on top. Even if you've considered existing staff and resources or investing in additional staff, technology comes out on top. It involves less overhead and it has greater flexibility in terms of contracts, right? So you get to reevaluate the contract as your needs change. If you've invested in a position of, say, a development coordinator who can do the work for you, what happens if, as your needs shift, now you have a commitment to a staff employee who you need to train or retrain or bring up to speed on another process that you need addressed, whereas vendors and contracts typically have an annual or every 3-year cycle that you are a lot less likely to get kind of stuck in. Do your best to align the value of your solution to the organizational goals here when you're quantifying the benefits, and wherever possible, ascribe a monetary value to it. I know this is not as easy as it seems. A lot of times I worked in advancement services and I had to work harder to follow the trail of dollars raised from my prospect researchers and database managers work than I ever did from the gift officers, for obvious reasons. So if you cannot directly tie the solution to dollars raised, use measurements such as time savings or FTE equivalents or ROPE, return on pain eliminated. Those can serve as sort of an interim step that then translates to dollars by way of salary savings, for example. So a direct ROI may be a retention rate of donors who give less than $1,000 will increase from 35% to 47%, resulting in a 3-year average increase in dollars raised of $35,000. This is a dream ROI statement. But there may be time savings. This solution will help save prospect researchers 6 hours a week, resulting in salary savings equivalent to X, $35,000. As long as you can tie it back to the dollars somehow, this is a valuable ROI. There may also be opportunity costs, right? So missing critical information about a principal gift donor, such as an obituary of a family member, could cost us between $1 million and $55 million in revoked commitments. So whatever solution you're working towards, try to find a way to quantify it in terms of dollars in the end, as much as possible. Once you've developed a business case, you've done all this work, it's really important to get buy-in from your key stakeholders to ensure everybody in the organization is going to be aligned on the need for the identified technology solution. Not only will this make your case stronger when you present it, but it will also test your assumptions and maybe some blind spots along the way. So one place to start, maybe go back to the same folks you interviewed during your needs assessment. They are stakeholders by way of their role, which will be affected by the implementation. Another important group is leadership, right? So talk to the members of the leadership that you think are appropriate here about what you're working on. Be sure to hear their concerns, because that will make your business case stronger. If they have any concerns, you're going to find a way to address those concerns. And explain how the investment will benefit the organization as a whole, right? So that you can get more buying from more parts of the organization. For example, I pulled this out of one of my business cases. Easy on-demand access to information will empower the research team and enable the fundraisers. The contract also includes consulting services through a dedicated advisor that will work with leadership, as well as unlimited user training. So while the solution was really about enabling fundraisers to track their performance metrics, it was going to take some of the burden off of prospect researchers, so it was helping them. The contract also included consulting services that was going to help my leadership team, and they were going to do all of the training whenever we needed them to. So I didn't need any additional resources for that. That touched a lot of areas of the organization. Once you've done all of that, maybe just as important is to collect the relevant references. So put in some extra hours here to find references that align as closely as possible with your problems and objectives. And I say this because a lot of times we go after, let me go find an institution that looks just like me, or walks just like me, talks just like me. But if they are not trying to solve the same problem you are looking to solve, they are not the most relevant reference, right? So find the one that is dealing with your problems and looking to perform the same objectives, and then use their stories to back up your case. If your decision makers are risk averse, and most are, knowing that other organizations have gone through the process and derived value from the solution will enhance your chances of getting their support. So for example, organization X needed a solution to support their reputational risk analysis. They started using solution A, and in the first 3 months of use, report having used it to identify 2 major findings they wouldn't have found otherwise. One vetting a board nominee, and another relating to a company being considered for a naming opportunity. When you're doing this, it's really important that this is relevant because it will resonate. Speaking of your risk-averse decision makers, you may be tempted to hide the risks. But I think just as important as all your positive evidence is the recognition that any new investment carries with it potential risks. So thinking about and identifying those up front will make it easier for you to mitigate them. For example, if you worry about your team adopting the tool to realize its full potential, set those expectations up front. Finding an advocate on the staff, or even within your leadership or on your board of directors who can champion the solution, can also help. For example, one way to do that might be to say, okay, there is a potential that fundraisers will not fully embrace the platform as the main source of their metrics management. Solution A helps mitigate those risks by providing in-person training for new users and hands-on support throughout the year. After that, Director of Prospect Research and Advancement Services Director will take on the continued support. Whatever your challenge may be, decision makers will definitely appreciate the forethought and readiness you demonstrate by including risk mitigation strategies up front. Finally, once you have obtained support, I call this part the I'm a genius part. You deserve a pat on the back. But the work doesn't really stop here, right? So you've gotten your solution through implement, monitor, and adjust. And what I mean by that is work with your IT team or the vendor to implement the solution. You need to continue to be the champion. Help unblock internal channels to ensure as smooth of an implementation as possible. And also important, make sure that whenever possible, it is integrated with your existing processes or systems. Once implemented, monitor its use. Lean on your vendor to provide training, or if you need help identifying usage statistics, but monitor the use of the system. You worked so hard to get buy-in to get to this point. The work doesn't stop here. If your employees are not adopting the platform, you need to make adjustments. Realize that most technology solutions make updates to functionality on a regular basis. So make sure you're getting the most out of your investment by getting all of the training and all of the support that is available to you. One strategy I employed was, even if my vendor contacts didn't do this proactively, some of them do, some of them don't, I set quarterly reminders on my own calendar to reach out to them and check in, to request usage information, to get updates on new functionality, learn where they were headed with their product roadmap, and anything else that I should know about. In the technology market, mergers and acquisitions are a thing. So the contact you had when you first signed on for service may not be there. Don't wait to hear from them. If it's an important tool, you want to stay on top of it. And then check in with your stakeholders, right? Keep them informed and engaged. Continued buy-in from those key stakeholders is going to be an important factor in keeping your technology contract going year after year. Hopefully you didn't do all this work to have the contract expire after year one. And that sums it up. Follow these 10 steps to build your business case and advocate for technology like a pro. And good luck.
Thank you, Mariana. So we're going to pause here. As you enter your questions, again, you may see a gray box that reads questions or chat, or perhaps an icon. So let's see, we do have some questions. Okay, do you have any tips for overcoming the hurdles of IT security review or the black hole of procurement? Great question, thank you.
That is a great question. I love the black hole of procurement. In my experience, to be successful as an advocate for a new solution, you really have to take ownership. Become the expert on that solution and assemble your allies across the organization. Make sure that you get ahead of any hurdles by inquiring early on about maybe what your security review process looks like. Understand what questions your IT team will ask, or a lot of times they'll have a standard questionnaire. See if they have that, and you can get ahead of the curve by working with your vendor to fill it out ahead of time so that you can anticipate any issues in that process. I think the same is true of procurement. If you have a procurement office, they are typically a bureaucratic place, right? They're there for a reason. They have processes that you have to follow. So learn about their process, know what forms will need to be filled out, and again, just get ahead of them. If you can gather all of that ahead of time, you can prepare yourself and others for any potential roadblocks and come up with strategies to overcome them. For my state institution friends, if you have done your research right and identified the perfect solution for your needs, don't be afraid to claim that it's a sole source solution. When I worked in higher education, I had great success going this route. We've gone through all of the steps that we discussed and outlined exactly why this solution is the right fit. There's a good chance that you have some really good materials to make a strong case for sole source. And don't forget that on the other side of IT security reviews and procurement reviews and all of that are people just like you and me. So make some friends.
Great, thank you. I see another one. What action steps do you suggest to ensure new technology gets adopted across the organization?
Yeah, another great question. User adoption. As I said, you've done all the hard work getting ready to get this technology solution to your organization. You've implemented, or it's time to implement and then roll it out, and reception is lukewarm. That can be heartbreaking. I mean, people are not always going to be ready to change their ways and adopt new technology. So I mentioned earlier the importance of getting your key stakeholders on board. I'm a big Marvel Comics fan, so I think of this as your Avengers Assemble moment. The same stakeholders that were there for the business case should be your first set of allies that you rely upon to help you roll this out to the greater organization. I think it's really important to remember that we're in the people business, and organizing activities around major milestones, whether they're virtual or you're in the office. So for like implementation kickoff, implementation wrap up, go live, and training can be really effective at, if nothing else, raising awareness and showing the support that you already have for the solution among your group of stakeholders. It's really, as a good technology advocate, I think it's really your job to be the chief marketing officer for your solution, the chief cheerleader for the project. You might also have to be the chief training officer and the chief handholder and VP of internal support. But if you can't be all of that, make sure that your team of advocates includes some folks that you can assign to those roles, right? So I had my director of research in the training and support role, while I was the chief cheerleader with my VP of development in kind of the chief enforcement role, to continue to reinforce the importance of the use of the platform. Great question.
Thank you, Mariana, and thank you to our guests for all of those great questions. We sure hope that you found this session valuable and that you have some actionable ways to build your own case for technology investment. At the start of the presentation, I mentioned that Insightful is hosting today's webinar. If you would like to learn more about Insightful, please reach out for a private demonstration for you and your team. We'd be happy to show you around. Also, we encourage you to check out our podcast. It's called No More, Raise More, and it's packed with conversations between fundraisers and donors and how they help build their relationships. As you exit today, you'll see a brief 3-question survey. Please take a moment to let us know what you thought about today's session and how we can improve in the future. On behalf of Insightful and the Newsbank team, thank you for spending part of your day with us. Goodbye.